Okay, family. So tonight we are pleased to have with us Charlene Williams and Barry Wilhite, who will be talking about building generational wealth through home ownership. Tonight's presentation will discuss the importance of generational wealth in general and its importance for the African American community. They will dive into some of the historical barriers that have prevented our community from being able to build wealth through home ownership. They will talk about some of the programs that are currently available to provide assistance to those who may be interested in buying a home but think it's unattainable. They will also share helpful tips and information about the path to home ownership, and finally discuss the importance of holding on to valuable family property as an asset. Our speakers, Charlene Williams is a native Washingtonian. She has had an interest and passion for real estate for many years. She enjoys helping others realize their dreams of home ownership and finds delight in working with people. Prior to entering the real estate field, she worked as a mental health professional. This experience allows her to be flexible and adaptable. It also helps her to better understand and empathize with clients during what can be a stressful time. Barry Wilhite has been a mortgage consultant since 2021, helping clients navigate the home financing process with clarity and confidence. With a background in the finance industry dating back to 2007, he brings over 15 years of experience in financial services, offering expert guidance on mortgage solutions tailored to individual needs. Barry is committed to empowering clients with the knowledge and tools needed to achieve home ownership. So I'm going to ask Charlene and Barry to please come on screen. And again, welcome to IKG Wisdom Wednesday. Again, a free monthly lecture series geared to providing wonderful programming, educational programming to the African American Black community. And tonight is no different. So we are pleased to have you here. I'm going to ask if you can unmute, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Charlene. I am really excited to be here with you all this evening. And this is a really exciting topic. It's a great way to, it's a great thing to talk about during Black History Month, of course, and then just a great way to kick off the year and talking about our topic for today, which is building generational wealth through home ownership. And then this is my co-host.
Yes, how you guys doing tonight? I am super excited to join you all in this conversation about building wealth through real estate. I'm just happy to see that we have people from all across the U.S. Joining this call today. That is, fantastic to see. Charlene and I do this on a day-to-day basis, so anyone that we can talk to about real estate, makes our day. So happy to join you guys in this conversation. Hopefully, you guys walk away with some value add and take this on and share with your friends, family, and so forth. All right, so I'll start sharing my screen, Charlene, and we can kick this off. All right, so are we all good?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, go ahead, Shirley.
All right. So, question that we want you all to answer in the chat. If I gave you this $100 bill today, how would you use it to create wealth for your family? Those some answers in the chat, and I'm going to read some of the answers that you all put in here. If I gave you this $100 bill today, how would you use it to create wealth for your family? Somebody said buy stocks. Okay. Anybody else? I would want to invest it in what would give the biggest return. Someone else said investments. Okay, good answers. Good answers. Someone said buy property. I don't know how far you're gonna get with $100 in this market, but it's a good idea. All right. Someone else said stocks. Somebody said buy Mimi coin, buy insurance. Somebody said save it. Another person with stocks. Somebody said Bitcoin. Okay. So those are some good ways to get started in creating generational wealth for your family. So Barry and I are going to dive into some ways to get started. I'm gonna pass it over to you, Barry.
As I figure out how to work this Zoom. Listen, man, I'm happy to hear some of those or see some of those answers there. I was expecting, a couple, Jordans, try to flip some Jordans on the black market or something, but everybody head is in the right space. So I'm certainly happy to see that. So today we're going to talk about again building generational wealth through real estate. And so here's a few of the topics we'll be touching on. The power of real estate, strategies for building generational wealth, historical challenges for African Americans, and some actionable steps that will start building wealth today. And then we'll do a recap and then leave it open for some Q&A time. So, but feel free to, put some questions in the chat as they come in your mind, and we can, pause throughout the presentation and address them. So we'll dive right in. So the first place we're going to start is just talking about equity, right? Equity is kind of the foundation and where you would start building generational wealth through real estate. So equity in real estate is the difference between the homes market value and the remaining mortgage balance. It grows over time through market appreciation as property values naturally increase and mortgage pay down. As regular payments reduce the loan balance, additional factors such as home improvements and neighborhood development can also accelerate equity growth by enhancing a property's value. Building equity is important because it creates, I'm sorry guys, it's a nerve-wracking thing when you're speaking in front of people that you can't see and also from all across the world. So listen, so we'll start this from the beginning. So equity in real estate is the difference between a home's market value and the remaining mortgage balance. It grows over time through market appreciation as property values naturally increase and mortgage pay down, as regular payments reduce the loan balance. Additional factors such as home improvements and neighborhood development can also accelerate equity growth by enhancing a property's value. Building equity is important because it creates long-term wealth, allows homeowners to refinance or take out equity loans, and provide financial security for future investments. To maximize equity growth, homeowners can make extra mortgage payments, invest in strategic renovations, and purchase properties in high appreciation areas. So just to talk about equity a bit, this is, where you start gaining wealth, right? So as you start buying, once you purchase a home and you start buying down the principal balance in that mortgage loan. So when you purchase a home, you get it financed through a lender or a mortgage company like myself. And as you start paying that down, you begin to build equity into the property, right? So for example, you purchase a home today and your principal balance is $500,000. You start making mortgage payments each month. Part of the mortgage payment is going to be your principal, will go towards your principal. You also have a portion that will go towards the interest, and then you have some escrows in there as well. But as you start making your mortgage payment, in the front of the loan, it'll go mostly towards your interest, but a little bit will start paying down the principal balance of that loan. And now you're starting to build a gap between how much the home is valued and how much you owe still to the mortgage company. So now you start building equity in that property. So, this is where, it starts. So buying your first home, and you start paying down the principal balance, you then you start building equity into that property. And then so on the flip side of building equity, your home starts to appreciate, right? So we've seen, especially in this recent market, where home prices have, increased in the past 3 years by 50%, right? So you may see a home that starts, 3 years ago would have been 200,000. Now that same home, it's $400,000, right? So that is home appreciation. And it's based off of factors like inflation, which we are seeing now in our market where inflation is at an all-time high. So, your home over time will start appreciating in value. And then once you have the equity and you have the home appreciation, now you can start leveraging, that equity that you've earned and the value of the home into other avenues of your life, right? So if you wanted to renovate the home that you're currently in, you could do that as well. If you decided that you wanted to start a business, right, with the equity and the home appreciation that you have obtained through your real estate, you can do that as well, right? So it just opens up a window of opportunity to help you gain more assets or dive into other ventures that you are, that your heart desires in life. So leveraging real estate is the benefit of buying real estate. Leveraging the equity is the benefit of buying real estate. So it's a great opportunity to start that foundation of building wealth, right? And then this is the reason why I'm reading it, because I'm a little nervous, guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. But I don't want to be rambling, too long with you guys. So leveraging home ownership and appreciation to generate wealth involves strategically using the increased value of the property to invest in income generating opportunities. As home appreciates, homeowners can tap into the equity through cash out refinancing, HELOCs, which are home equity line of credits, or home equity loans to purchase additional real estate, which can provide rental income and further appreciation of value equity. Can also be reinvested into the home, improvements that increase property value, yielding higher returns when selling additional using home equity to pay off high interest debt, can free up cash flow for investments in stocks, businesses, or other assets. However, it's crucial to manage risk carefully, ensuring that debt is used wisely to create long-term financial growth rather than short-term liabilities. So when you do use the equity in your home, you don't want to go out and make bad decisions with those funds, right? We don't want to go out there and finance Louis Vuitton or Gucci bags, right? We want to make sure we are leveraging those funds for income producing assets. All right, so some strategies for building wealth, right? There is the buy and hold method, right? So these are going to be your long-term avenues of wealth, right? So this is going to be primarily for like rental properties. You purchase a home, and then you use it as a rental property to where you can start gaining some passive income, right? Most times people will finance an investment property and then have someone else pay the mortgage, right? So you're gaining wealth by having someone pay your liabilities, So there's the buy and hold method of real estate to where you could gain some passive income. All right, this one here is not taken advantage of a lot, right? This is house hacking, where you can buy a multi-unit property, and this is something where you could buy it, like, for example, you can buy up to 4 units, right? And only put 3% down or 3.5% down, depending on the type of financing that you utilize, right? And so it's a very affordable way to start your investment portfolio, because now you're buying multiple units versus just one unit, like a single family or a townhouse. You can buy multi-units where you could start, having other people pay for your living expense, right? So if you have 4 units, you live in one, and then you rent the other 3 out to your friends, family, or whoever, other renters who are interested in the property, right? And now they're paying your mortgage on that 4-unit property. And so this is called house hacking, and it's not used a lot. Most people are not, comfortable with making that sacrifice of, because if you're buying a house, sometimes you have kids, you have a family, and you just don't want to, put them into a 1-unit apartment. But it's definitely a way to start gaining some wealth by having others pay for your mortgage and collecting rent each month. And then so we also have the short-term rental, right? So these are going to be like your Airbnb properties. These are very popular today. A lot of people buy them like in beach towns or in very touristy cities, such as like Washington, D.C. I know we got some D.C. folks on here today, so you could buy these properties and constantly rent them out, on a short-term basis, right? This is some quick cash, quick money that will come into your pocket. But you want to be careful in where you buy these properties, right? You don't want to buy them in areas where you don't get a ton of traffic, because you're not going to make much money that way. So, all right. And then you also have the fix and flip. This is the most common, right? A lot of people want to be able to fix a home, sell it, and then move on to the next property. But in this method, you would buy a fixer-upper, that does not cost a ton of money, and then you would do some renovations to it, improve the property, and then sell it for higher than you paid, right? For this, you just want to watch out for your costs, right, and rehabbing the house to make sure that you do get a return on your investment. This can be a little bit of a risk, just depending on dealing with contractors, right? So typically with fix and flips, you want to get these sold pretty quickly, but sometimes not having the right contractor could cause issues with this, right? So if you have planned to have this house sold in 6 months, but your contractor disappears on you, doesn't finish the work, or you run out of money for unexpected expenses with rehabbing the home, those can cause some issues. So you definitely want to make sure that you watch out for some of those roadblocks there. All right, Charlene, so I'm gonna pass it back to you.
Barry was mentioning some of the ways that we can build generational wealth through home ownership. Statistically, right now in the United States of America, African Americans are behind other races and ethnic groups in home ownership. And that is really because of a lot of historical challenges that have plagued African Americans in being able to own a home. So we're going to just go through some of the historical challenges and reasons why we are behind. We have, like I said, faced significant historical challenges in real estate, primarily rooted in systemic racism and discriminatory practices. During the earliest 20th century, discriminatory laws such as redlining, racially restrictive covenants denied Black families access to home ownership in many neighborhoods, limiting their ability to build wealth. Redlining, where lenders refused to offer mortgages to Black families or those in predominantly Black areas, further entrenched segregation and the disinvestment in Black communities. Additionally, Blacks were often denied loans or forced into subprime mortgages with higher interest rates. These barriers, compounded by a history of violence and intimidation to prevent Black families from moving into white neighborhoods, have contributed to generational wealth gaps and unequal opportunities in home ownership, which continues to affect the African American community today. And so we're just going to get into a little bit of like what some of these things were, and these were legal tactics that they used to keep us behind in building wealth through home ownership. Next slide, please, Barry. So redlining was legal between 1930 and 1960. The Homeowners Loan Corporation created redlining maps where neighborhoods with high Black populations were marked in red as high-risk areas, making it nearly impossible for residents in these areas to access mortgages. These maps were used by banks and lenders to deny loans to Black families, severely limiting their ability to buy homes or improve on the existing ones. This practice contributed to long-lasting economic and racial segregation. Racially restrictive covenants. This was popular between 1920 and 1940. Again, these were legal. Many white neighborhoods adopted racially restrictive covenants in property deeds that explicitly prohibited Black families, as well as people from color, from buying or renting homes. These covenants were legally enforceable in many cases and were often used by real estate developers and neighborhood associations to maintain racial homogeneity. The house that I grew up in as a teenager actually had one of these racially restrictive covenant deeds still on the deed when we lived there back in the 90s. So this was a real thing. And I'm in the Maryland area. So this was in Maryland where this was on the deed still, many years later. Okay, next slide. The Levittowns, this was between 1940 and 1950. The Levittowns was a large suburban housing development after World War II. They are famous for their mass production of affordable homes. However, they were exclusively available to white families, with African Americans systemically excluded through discriminatory practices such as refusing to sell homes to Black buyers or to rent to Black tenants. This exclusion was a major part of the suburban boom that helped many white families build wealth while leaving African Americans out. Blockbusting, this was between 1950 and 1970. Real estate agents engaged in blockbusting, a practice where they would sell homes to Black families in predominantly white neighborhoods, then convince the white homeowners to sell their properties at a loss due to the presence of Black residents. The agents would then resell those homes to Black families at inflated prices, creating racial tensions and further segregating communities. And this was just in 1970. And then there was the Fair Housing Act. While the Fair Housing Act of 1968 sought to end discrimination in housing, its implementation was slow and often ineffective due to lack of enforcement. Even after the law was passed, African Americans continued to face discrimination in both renting and purchasing homes. Despite the legal changes, and subtle forms of racism continued to persist, and Black buyers still encountered significant challenges when seeking home ownership in certain areas. Okay, we have a little technical difficulty there. Back to you, Barry.
All right, so some of the steps to start building wealth today is making sure you invest in the right property. So investing in the right property involves carefully considering options like multifamily homes or fixer-uppers. Multifamily homes offer the potential for multiple rental incomes, which can provide a steady cash flow and long-term financial security. Fixer-uppers, on the other hand, may require significant work but can be purchased at a lower price, allowing for added value through renovations. Both types of properties can yield substantial returns if managed well. With the opportunity to increase equity over time, choosing the right investment requires a balance of risk, potential reward, and a clear vision for property improvement or management. So all right, so the next step here is going to be, start the pre-approval process, right? Getting pre-approved for a loan is an essential step before starting the house hunting process. It helps you understand your budget by giving you a clear picture of how much you can afford to borrow based on your financial situation, including income, credit scores, and debt. A pre-approval letter from a lender strengthens your position when you make an offer on a home, as it shows sellers you are serious and a qualified buyer. Additionally, knowing your budget ensures your focus on homes within your financial reach, avoiding the disappointment of looking at properties you can't afford. So this is like the biggest step and the first step, right? So before you go out looking for a home, you definitely want to know how much you can afford. And also before you speak to a lender, you want to have a budget in place for yourself, right? When you speak to a lender, we'll let you know how much you are approved for based on a couple different metrics, one being your debt to income ratio. In most cases, your max will be 50%. So which means that 50% of your income cannot exceed in debt, right? So if you have, let's say, for instance, you make $6,000 a month, your monthly debt cannot go over $3,000. Sorry. So that will include your existing debt and also the projected mortgage payment. So just to give you a rough idea, in the DMV area, our average sales price is about $450,000, right? On a mortgage that size, your payment is going to be roughly about $3,500. Okay, so in order to qualify for that property, you would need to at least make about $7,000, for that a month, and that's if you have no debt. So a lot of issues that we're having today with affordability is the amount of debt that borrowers are coming to the table with. So this is going to be your car loans. This is going to be student loan debt. This is going to be credit cards and any other installment loans like personal loans that you have in your credit report is what we will consider towards your debt to income ratio. And also, if you use any of the buy now and pay later platforms, such as like Klarna, Affirm, or Afterpay, we have to include those as debts in your debt to income ratio. So it's best to limit, if you're looking to purchase a home, it's best to limit the amount of debt that you have. So if you need to take a look at reducing your debt, paying some things off, that will definitely help you with being able to qualify for a mortgage. Also, your credit score is a huge impact as well, right? To receive better rates and terms of the mortgage, you want to aim for the highest credit score possible. We can do loans as low as 580 credit scores, but with the 580 credit score, you're going to need some other compensating factors such as reserves, right? So if you have a low credit score, we want to see that you have some savings, right? And this could be savings in your bank account. It could be retirement savings, or it could be assets in like stocks that you may have. But we want to see that you have some reserves set aside if you were to lose your job, or you have reduced hours or whatnot. We want to make sure that you can sustain that mortgage through through rough times. So so having stronger credit will definitely help you with the rates and terms of your mortgage.
Excuse me,
Having savings.
excuse me, to quickly interrupt. There's a Chrome message covering the slide. If you click out of that.
Okay. Yeah, so again, having money saved is also a big factor. So although you don't have to put 20% down anymore to purchase a home, adding more money towards your down payment can help reduce your mortgage payment, right? It reduces what we call also your mortgage insurance premium, which is a part of your mortgage payment if you're putting less than 20% down. So again, you're reducing your costs by having a higher credit score. Your mortgage insurance is also impacted by your credit score. And basically what mortgage insurance does is it protects the lender if you were to default on your mortgage. So that's why that's in place. If you're putting less than 20% down on a conventional loan, if you're using an FHA financing, mortgage insurance is there for the life of the loan until either you refinance or pay off the loan. So yeah, so having all these things looked at by a loan officer will help you put a plan in place, get the best terms and conditions of your mortgage, and also you just simply know how much you qualify and what you can afford. Charlene, you want to take the recap?
Sure. So, based on what we shared, real estate continues to be a key strategy for building generational wealth, offering long-term financial stability and growth. And by addressing some of the historical injustices and capitalizing on contemporary opportunities, there is a potential for us to close that wealth gap. I believe that we can, and I believe that through educating one another, by encouraging one another to, work on our credit, encouraging, the younger generation to consider purchasing homes as opposed to renting. I do believe that we can close that wealth gap. But I think it's just a matter of having these conversations, starting these conversations early, that will lead us to, financial success. And we all want to, we all want to see this for our families and for our community. So hopefully some of the things that we shared will be helpful to getting started with the conversation about building generational wealth through home ownership. And please let us know if you have any questions that you think that would be helpful to get started. Okay, so please post in the question and answer box. I'm going to run over there and see what's in there. So one question from Kim is, by taking equity out of my home, does this extend the length of my mortgage?
Yeah, so it depends on how you take out the equity, right? So if you do it through a cash out refinance, most times people, will extend their mortgage back to 30 years, right? So say, for instance, you're 15 years into your mortgage and you want to take some equity out by doing a cash out refinance, then yeah, that would extend your mortgage back to 30 years. And also will increase your principal balance again by taking out that equity. The most common method of doing it is a home equity line of credit, right? So this does not restart your mortgage. However, it allows you to utilize the equity in your out of your property it's kind of like a revolving, it's like almost like a credit card for equity, right? You only pay on what you use. So say, for instance, you wanted to take out $50,000 in equity, but you've only used 10,000 of that 50, right? You're only making payments on that $10,000 versus if you were to do a cash out refinance, you're making payments on the full $50,000 and you are increasing your principal balance back. with that $50,000. So if your principal balance is down to 250 and you take out 50,000 in equity, you're increasing your mortgage back to 300,000, right? Some people do that, when interest rates were at that 2 and 3% or even 4%, that was a good way of going about it. But because we're in high interest rate, markets right now, the best way to go if you're going to take equity out would be the home equity line of credit. That way, you're only paying back what you use on the mortgage or out of the home equity.
And there's a question that was in the chat that actually relates to that that I saw that I do want to ask, coming from Jay Wilson. How do you apply for a home equity loan? Is
Yeah.
it the same as applying for a mortgage loan?
Yeah. So it's not as detailed as a mortgage loan, right? So when you apply for a mortgage, there's so many steps that you have to take. You have to get an appraisal done. You have to get an inspection done. You have deposits, down payments, and everything like that. But with because you already own the home with the home equity line of credit, you simply can go through your bank or through whoever services your mortgage at the moment and apply for a home equity line. The only thing that you would have to consider is that you have to keep 20% of the equity in your home, right? So you can't. So say for instance, you have $50,000 in equity. You cannot take out the full $50,000. You have to keep 20%, at least 20% of that equity into the home. And this is just a risk factor for the banks, right? We don't want you to, if you still have a mortgage on the home, we don't want you to exhaust all the equity in the home just in case, property values decrease or whatnot. You have to keep a certain amount of equity in your property. So that would be the only, caveat to apply for a HELOC versus a mortgage.
Another question is, someone's asking, what should a budget entail? Buying a property is one thing, but maintaining the property and all its expenses is another. So you're asking about, like, how do you create this budget, I guess, before you decide to purchase a home?
Right. And so that's a good question. So a lot of people, don't do that before purchasing a home, right? They just kind of think, oh, I can afford the mortgage payment and that's it. But yeah, you do have maintenance that you have to upkeep on that home, right? So the best thing to do is to take a look at your lifestyle, of course, as well. Are you a person that like to dine out, or do you cook at home? Do you like to travel? Do you like to shop? You want to consider all of those aspects of your life as well when creating that budget. So it's not just the mortgage payment. And one thing too, when we approve you for a mortgage, we're basing it off of your gross income, right? So this is not your take home. This is not what you net. So what's comfortable for you. So what I would suggest is just write down, your outside expenses. So things that are not shown on your credit report, like your cell phone bill, your average for utilities. You have to pay for water or electric, or if you have gas, you would pay for water and gas. And then also I would budget, for having maintenance done to your home, right? You just never know when you would have an issue with the water heater or your air conditioning unit runs out. There are home warranties that will cover those expenses for you. But you may want to do some renovations, to your properties, some landscaping, add on a deck, paint your home. Those are things that you want to budget for. Because you will, obviously you're going to be living there, so you want to make sure that you could do those things. So I would always recommend as well to have at least 6 months of savings, so that if you do have an unexpected emergency that comes up, that doesn't put you behind. It's hard to catch up on a mortgage payment that's $2,000 or $3,000, right? If you start falling behind on that, it's not like a car payment where it could be couple $100. You know, so it's always best to have, you know, some savings for a rainy day, so that if something does happen, you know, you're prepared for it.
And I want to add to that question, or to that answer, you know, just because, you know, if you go to the loan officer and you get approved for a certain amount, you know, just understanding what that mortgage payment is going to be, you might get approved, let's say, based on your income for a $400,000 loan, but you may say, based on your lifestyle and your budget, you know, I'd like to look at homes more in the $300,000 range because that's more comfortable for me. So I would advise everyone, just because you're approved for a certain amount, you know, you go when they say, well, you can get this, you know, this amount of loan. You know, consider your lifestyle, like Barry was saying, and you might decide that, you know, I don't want to go to the top of what I'm approved for. I want to stay a little lower, so that my monthly payments are more comfortable for me. All right.
I'm sorry, now I'll add one more thing to that.
Sure, go ahead,
So,
Barry.
you know, I mentioned earlier about the debt to income ratio. You know, ask your lender, where are you, you know, on that spectrum? Like, you know, are you 50, are you at the max, right? Or, you know, are you at like 43%? Because that's a good indicator on if you are, you know, running hot or not, right? So, you know, just think of, you know, your gas tank, right? You know, you could be, you know, at full, or you know, you could be, you know, on E, right, or close to E. You just want to be able to gauge it based on that debt to income ratio. So if you're somewhere about 30%, right, let's say you're at 30% debt to income ratio, meaning that 30% of your income is going towards debt, then you're at a good spot, right? That means you have a little bit of wiggle room to start saving money, to still save money, you know, to be prepared for unexpected emergencies. You know, but if you're at that 50% mark, you know, you're closer to that E. You know, you're running on empty almost, right? So you want to, you know, make sure that you have a good gauge of where you are with your numbers. If you haven't done a budget, you can always ask your lender, you know, hey, what's my debt to income ratio? You know, am I, you know, at the top of my budget or not?
Okay, thanks, Barry. All right, another question here is, do you recommend mortgage life insurance?
Yeah, I mean, any insurance is always going to be, you know, good, you know, to have. But, you know, I would, you know, that's more so for, you know, a financial advisor to guide you on, you know, when it comes to insurance. Um, but, you know, having insurance, you know, added protection to, you know, if something were to happen, you know, you lose your job, you know, you'll be able, you know, you don't have to, you know, worry about, you know, losing your home, because you'll have insurance that will help, you know, cover that expense. Um, but yeah, that's something that, you know, you want to sit down with a financial advisor and go over, you know, your unique, you know, situation.
Okay. Next question is, how to improve credit before applying to ensure approval for mortgage loans? What
Yeah.
are loan officers looking to see in credit history?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So a lot of times, you know, when I see applications, you know, oftentimes your credit score is going to be lower than what you would see like on your bank app or, you know, Credit Karma. And the reason being is because there are variations in, you know, credit scores, right? So you know, there's a FICO 2, a FICO 3, a FICO 4, a FICO 5. In mortgages, we use very old models, right? And so a lot of times your credit score for a mortgage is going to be a lot less than your credit score for applying for a credit card or your credit score applying for a car loan, because they all use different calculations to get there. So the best thing that I would do is just find a lender that can do a soft pull of your credit report, so that you can, you know, get an idea of what your mortgage credit score will be. And they can also use tools like credit simulators to let you know what exactly you need to address in your credit report to improve your credit score. So, you know, it would be things like paying down your credit card to get your utilization below 30%. or it could be, getting your getting collection accounts paid off and removed off of the credit report. Or it could, you could have, too many inquiries, right? And you may need to try to get some of those removed off. There could be a variety of things that that could be done, but the best thing to do is just, have a lender do a soft pull of your credit report, and they'll be able to tell you exactly what to address in order to improve your credit score.
Okay, thank you. The next question are there any online sites you can recommend to learn more about the ins and outs of fix and flips or buying multifamily properties?
Yeah, so Investopedia, I'm not sure if anyone has been on that website, but they have a ton of resources there that discuss everything finance, right? So that's a good resource. Also, there's plenty of podcasts out there like Bigger Pockets. They talk about investments all day long. So yeah, so there are, a ton of resources out there that will teach you about investing. The best thing that I can tell you though is to try to find a mentor, someone that has done investment properties, because there's always nuances when you're doing investments, right? Picking out the right area, picking out the right contractors, getting connected with hard money lenders, right? There are so many avenues that you want to have someone by your side that's been through it, that could guide you through some of the road bumps. So I think it's, that's more valuable than, you trying to read it, and understand it. You want to get with someone that's been in the game and understands the business.
Okay. The next question is, what are the risks of using your home or part of your home as an Airbnb?
I mean, from a financial standpoint, there's really no risk. But from a safety standpoint, you just never know who you are letting into your residence. But from a financial standpoint, there's no risk. As long as they're paying for it. The beauty of that is too, you're now utilizing your home as a short-term rental, which can be, a tax deductible item, right? So that there's more benefits to it from a financial standpoint, than there are than cons,
Okay. The next question is, what are some programs for first-time home buyers?
Yeah, so it varies by state. So if you're in the Maryland area, we have what we call the Maryland Mortgage Program. And that program has a variety of different options for you. So, there's we have a program called the Smart Buy, and that pays off some of your student loan debt, right? And also gives you money towards your down payment and closing costs. And then you can take advantage of, some First Advantage is another product under the Maryland Mortgage, where they'll give you a percentage of the purchase price to go towards your down payment and closing costs as well. The one thing about the first-time home buy programs are, most of them are not forgivable, right? So if you were to sell or refinance your home, you pay those funds back, right? You don't have to pay it in cash. It just deducts from like the equity in your home. But those funds you do have to pay back. There are some programs out here that will give you grant money, but those are, those programs typically run out of money at a certain point, right? So, we have the FHLB program, which is actually a nationwide program, but they refill their funds back in February, and then by April they're pretty much out of funds, right? So you want to catch that window of opportunity if you're going to use grant programs. but you know, like the Maryland Mortgage Program, you know, they always have funds available for first-time home buyers. There's DC Open Doors if you live in DC. There's HPAP. But the one thing, you know, I recommend is try to save as much of you know, your down payment and closing costs as you can, so that you don't solely have to rely on down payment assistance programs, right? You know, a part of buying a home is making a competitive offer, right? So if you're in a market where, you know, you're competing with other buyers on your on the home that you love, then, you know, sometimes down payment assistance programs, they require certain timeframes, right? That's needed to close. So the standard time frame, you know, to close is 30 days, right? Most sellers want to close that home within a 30-day time period or shorter. But when you start using down payment assistance programs, some of them, you know, require 45 days or even 60 days to close. And that puts you at a disadvantage on in a competitive market. So they are out there to help you. But at the same time, you know, I want to be real with you about where we are in the market. It's very competitive. And you know, you just want to kind of save up, you know, as much as you can, so that you don't have to rely heavily on the down payment assistance, because, you know, you can always get seller concessions to help with your offer. So, you know, say for instance, you're short, you know, a couple thousand, you know, you can ask the seller, you know, to contribute towards it, to complete it in exchange for a faster closing time. So there's different ways to negotiate it. But, you know, there are plenty of programs. I can't speak for the entire nation, but I know in Maryland, you know, we have some pretty good programs that will help you get into a home for the first time.
And can I ask a follow-up question about the
Mhm.
grants? Can you like what would be the process of applying for those
Yeah.
grants? How much um can one usually get with the grant? Just can you speak a little bit more to that grant process?
Yeah, so some grants are up to like 25,000, right? It's really based, so there's assessments that they will do to see, you know, to make sure that, you know, you're getting enough funding, you know, to cover your closing costs and down payment. But at the same time, some of them will require you to have some of your own money as well. But yeah, there's some grants, like the FHLB program, will give you up to $20,000 to go towards your down payment and closing costs, which is a significant amount to reducing your total out-of-pocket expense. And to apply for, most times the lender will have these programs already, you know, in their products. So, you know, there's not much that you would have to do. It's just that the funds would have to be available in order to utilize it. So, you know, if we see a program where the funds are available, we would just, you know, submit your loan for the grant program. Most times, you know, there are some homebuyer education courses they may require you to take, right? In order to receive the grants, or like in Baltimore, they have a trolley tour to where they'll give you $5,000 to tour the city of Baltimore. And that can be used to go towards your down payment and closing. But it just varies on the program, what they will require. But the most common thing is to take the home buyer education course. Some of it is online, or you have to go in person for those courses.
All right. And right now, the last question that's in the chat is, how much should you factor in the HOA and CDDs before buying a property? I think this it's really a budgeting question. If you, I'm gonna take a stab at it, then I'll let Barry jump in. But when we talked about before, if you have an idea of what your budget is and what you can afford a month, once you get pre-approved for that mortgage, or that, you know, if, for example, if you say, I don't want to spend more than $2,000 a month, when you go out looking for homes, and if you end up looking for a home that's a part of the HOA, or it's a condo and there's a condo association, You're going to know upfront, a good realtor should be telling you, hey, this is the price of this property, but this is the monthly or yearly, HOA fee or condo association fee. And so you would know, upfront what that's going to be and about what your mortgage payment would be. And you could decide if that's affordable for you. Different places may have outrageous. The cost of the house may be inexpensive or quote unquote inexpensive, but sometimes those HOAs could be, upwards depending on the location, $1,000 or $800. So you should know that prior to making the decision on if this is the right home for you based on your budget. And then I'll turn it over to Barry. Barry, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, so typically, during the home buying process, you're going to work closely with your lender, right? And they, can run loan estimates for you on properties that you're interested in, right? So say, for instance, Charlene takes you out on the weekend to look at a few different properties, and you're like, oh, I really like this property here, and I'm considering making an offer. Charlene will let me know, or you as the buyer will let me know, hey, this is the property I'm interested in, and I will give you what we call a loan estimate worksheet. And I will factor in, the HOA costs, the taxes on that property, estimated insurance costs. And so you'll pretty much know the details of the financials at that point before making an offer. So you're not going in blindly once you're under contract. So because each property could yield a different HOA, a different tax. It just depends on the area. So it's always best just to have your lender run the numbers for you prior to submitting an offer.
There was also another question that was in the chat that I happened to see, just trying to catch some additional ones. Michael was asking about a rental and getting an HELC. I
Yeah.
guess maybe your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so are you saying using your home equity to purchase a rental, Michael? Just to clarify, or
Yeah, Michael, if you're still there, he says no. Can you clarify your question? And again, family, we're gonna be wrapping up in a few minutes. So if you do have any pressing questions that you definitely want to answer, please feel free.
oh yeah. So definitely, I mean, that is one way you can leverage your home equity is to pay down debt, especially high interest debt, right? So if you are maxed on your credit cards, and you want to pay those off, the best way to go about it would be using your equity to pay off those high interest debts, right? So but if it's something where you're only paying like 1% or 0%, I mean, you can still use the equity, but financially it may not make sense because you're still paying interest when you take out a home equity line of credit. So you just want to kind of see how much interest you're getting charged. So most credit cards nowadays are about 18 to 20% interest. You're nowhere near that on a home equity line of credit. So it would be, an advantage to transfer that debt through your home equity line of credit.
Thank you. Oh my God. Okay. All right. Family, thank you all for joining us for tonight's program. We do invite you out to our next Wisdom Wednesday, which will be on March 19th, and it will feature our founder and director, Tony Browder. He will be speaking on the cultural imperative program that he operates. He and his daughter Atlantis operates. So we definitely look forward to you all joining us next month. And before we close out, how can people get in contact with you, Charlene and Barry? Wonderful. Okay, so on the screen, we have their contact information. So if you still have further questions, definitely reach out to them. Their numbers and email addresses are there. And were there any closing remarks that you all would like to share before we close out the program?
I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to present. Thank you all for being present and so engaged. This was definitely an honor and a highlight. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Yeah, and I will mimic the same thing. I appreciate you guys having us. Sorry for my nervousness. I'm typically not this nervous. But just it's just a different platform for me. More so like a face-to-face. I like to see expressions and everything. But I thank you guys for bearing with me. Great questions. And if there's anything that I could do to help you all in the real estate world, please feel free to reach out to me. Michael, I did see your comment about connecting with a good lender. If you want to just put in the chat, where you are located, I can certainly connect you with someone in your area.
Absolutely. And also someone says, no need to apologize, great program. It absolutely was. Again, we thank you all for joining us. And we again ask you to come see us next month, March 19th, with our very own Tony Browder. Until then, all be well, be safe, be blessed. Thank you for joining us.